Paul Ilona, he's no stranger to those of you here. And to his amazing team who are part of the HarvestPlus family around the world. So thank you so much. I feel very welcomed here at IITA. I'm sorry it's taken me 12 months to get here, but I feel like it's been worth the wait. So thank you so much. I'm also delighted to be joined by two members of my leadership team based in Washington, D.C. Dr. Wolfgang Pfeiffer, no stranger to many of you, and it's a great honor that I am supported by such a knowledgeable Chief Scientific Officer and Director of Research and Development at HarvestPlus. And I'd like to introduce our new Chief Financial Officer, Arun Baral, who joined us from the private sector about 3 months ago. So as you can see, this is a team effort. The HarvestPlus family is growing, and we are very much part of the CGIAR family. And therefore, when we grow, you grow, and our beneficiaries grow. And we're all here to remember why HarvestPlus was born in the first place. I'm already made a mess of the technology, I do apologize. So I'd like to spend just a few minutes giving you a little bit of history. I've spent the last 12 months learning where we came from, a little history of biofortification and HarvestPlus. I'll give you a little update and a summary of where we are today, with a summary of our current activities and the impact that the program is having around the world. And I will finish by giving you a glimpse of the future, our vision. It's described as a new vision, but really it's just an expansion of the existing vision. We're going bigger, we're going braver, we're going bolder, and we're doing that in partnership. So we've set this ambitious goal to reach 1 billion people around the world with biofortified crops and food by 2030. We cannot do that without you. And so if we go back to why we're doing this, these numbers are produced frequently in CGR presentations, but I'd like us just to pause for a moment and truly think what this means to the world. 2 billion people, that's 1/3 of our planet's population, is not getting enough micronutrients in their diets. That's 2 billion people that are not living to their full potential. They're not able to learn and grow, be educated to their full potential, and grow up to be leaders and adults in their communities that reach their full potential. The reason I joined HarvestPlus, and I think the reason why many people work in this amazing CGR system, is because of these unacceptable statistics that are on this slide. And they're unacceptable because they're fixable. This is not a problem without a solution. We can do this. This is something that we have a solution to. It is unacceptable that 5.2 million children before school age are suffering from preventable blindness. So what? Iron, another building block of health, is causing cognitive abilities that are being impaired for life. This is irreversible. Once the brain is impaired, it doesn't fix itself sometime later in adult life once someone manages to get a good diet. We need to fix this in childhood. In India, which is another part of the world that we are passionately and deeply connected to through HarvestPlus, 82% of children under 2 years old are anemic and not getting enough iron. That means they run the risk of having a lack of brain development that will allow them to grow and learn as a human being that can live to their full potential. And zinc, we're learning so much about this key micronutrient, this building block of health. Here in Africa, we see so many diseases that could actually be less severe if we improved zinc in people's diets. Diseases like malaria, deaths from malaria can be prevented if people are not suffering from zinc deficiency. Diarrheal diseases that take so many children from us. can be reduced significantly if we improve zinc in children's diets. And diseases like pneumonia, they're killing people, but again, they're preventable. We can reduce the prevalence of these diseases through diet, through improving nutritional status. And we've all become all too familiar with this horrible world, this word stunting, that is so associated with the poorest of our communities. It's a horrible word. I would love to live in a world that this word is never uttered again. I can't bear this word because it describes for me something that is abhorrent in today's world. We should not accept that children are growing up and not reaching their full growth potential or their brain development potential. We can fix this. So let's just look at the scale of this. Where is this problem? This chart, it's already 7 years old and we need to update it, but the problem is still here. This shows the severity of common micronutrient deficiencies in children under 5 years old. The darker the color, the more serious the impact on health. And this is why we're here in Nigeria. This is why we're here in Africa, because we have a concentrated job to do here. We need to fix this problem. So many things have been tried, and many are successful. Giving people the micronutrients they need takes many forms. Supplementation plays a very important role. Iron tablets and vitamin A tablets are saving many, many lives and are still very much needed. Commercial fortification is also playing a very important role. We can add micronutrients into many processed foods. The challenge is that many people who are in that 2 billion do not have access to processed foods. They cannot afford to go to a shop and buy. So we need an alternative solution. Now, of course, that they can play their part in buying, and that's still a long way off for many people. So we need agriculture to step up. We need agriculture to play this role. And we have agricultural tools now that can start filling this gap. And the biggest one and the most exciting one that you've all become familiar with is this long word, biofortification. Naturally fortifying the very plants and the very crops that many people are relying on for their daily energy and nutrition needs. And in the words of the man behind the creation of the idea of biofortification, the simplicity of this is that we're letting the plants do the work. We're not putting nutrients into people's diets artificially. We're breeding the plants so that they express naturally high levels of these 3 micronutrients. And I'm sure this man is no stranger to those of you in this room. I was deeply honored last year to step up and try to fill the very big boots left behind by Howdy Buis, who was one of the 4 World Food Prize winners in 2016. Now, Howdy is so much more than just the founder of HarvestPlus. He is a remarkable economist who brought together nutrition, economics, and agriculture to solve one of the world's biggest problems, micronutrient malnutrition. He's been pioneering an effort behind biofortification for over 20 years. And from one man, he grew a staff of 170 people. And this group is still growing and still expanding, and I have the deep honor now of being part of this amazing family. But this family is part of a much, much bigger family of thousands of researchers and economists and nutritionists as part of the CJR family. So together, we can solve this problem within our lifetime. We can make an impact on children's lives, And we can make biofortification a solution that's sustainable and is going to help Africa regain that foothold as a tremendous developer of not just technology, but of food. So where are we today? Well, this slide keeps changing, and I suspect Wolf is going to tell me, no, those numbers have updated in the last time since I showed this slide, but I'm delighted to say that we have 12 different varieties of biofortified crops. 10 of those varieties have already been released in up to 30 countries, maybe more, and we have testing underway for all 12 varieties in up to 60 countries around the world. So after 11 years of pioneering and research, we really are going to scale. These crops are growing, they're feeding people, and they're delivering an impact on people's lives. It all starts with a seed. In fact, it all starts HarvestPlus has its home deeply rooted in the CGR, because none of this is possible without the huge investment in research and development. The Gates Foundation, the UK government, the US government, between them have invested $310 million in the research and discovery of varieties that are not just high in zinc, vitamin A or iron, but they're also able to meet the demands of high yields that we need, of drought tolerance and pesticide resistance. And my able assistant is now going to just tell me what the actual numbers are. We have 150 varieties of 12 crops. So, I mean, these numbers grow every time I give this presentation. So, and thanks to all of you, because you're out there developing them. Thank you, Wolf, for bringing us up to speed. So this gives you a global snapshot of where the crops are being tested and released. I urge you to visit the HarvestPlus website, where you'll find an interactive version of this map. You can click on any country, and it will show you the level of micronutrient malnutrition prevalence in that country. It will tell you which crops have been identified as the priority crop to tackle that problem in that community. And it will tell you the status of testing or release of that crop. This is a phenomenal tool. This is the Biofortification Prioritization Index. It's been developed by HarvestPlus, and it's being used by governments and researchers all over the world to try and zoom in on this problem and identify the quickest way of solving this problem of micronutrient malnutrition. And we're getting results. By the end of 2016, we were reaching 5.4 million households around the world. That's not just farmers receiving packets of seeds. This is measured impact through our monitoring and evaluation teams that are able to verify that these households are both growing and, most importantly, consuming these more nutritious staple foods in their diets. And this means that we're already reaching more than 26 million people and making impacts to their diets and their lives. Our research teams have spent the last 11 years investing in efficacy trials, and we're able now to show some remarkable health impact results. We know, for instance, that vitamin A maize improves the vitamin A status and night vision of 4 to 8-year-old children living in rural parts of Zambia. We know, thanks to your great work here in Nigeria and other parts of Africa, that vitamin A cassava improves vitamin A status of rural children in Kenya. This is really important. It takes many, many years of study, you know, to get these field trial results published, but this evidence matters. We know that iron beans can improve the iron status as well as the physical and cognitive functions of young women in Rwanda. And we know that iron pearl millet improves the iron status and both the physical and cognitive performance of adolescents in India. This is just a snapshot of the published evidence, But we know that our teams are reporting with their very eyes the dramatic impact that they're having on people's families. It takes a long time to get verifiable health impact data, but let's not forget, we don't just have data, we have real life stories in every country, from every household that we're in. So what happens next? We've got the science, we've got the evidence, we've got the partnerships, we've got the crops. It's time to go to scale. And many people have said this, but few have said it in a way that resonated so personally with me. The president of the African Development Bank, no stranger to IITA, Akina Deshna, said, "For me, the challenge is no longer the science of biofortification. We know it works. The challenge as policymakers is to scale up biofortified crops to reach millions, and just doing field trials. This is about changing minds. This is about making institutional change to government policy, to regulatory policy for seed distribution and release, to financial policy for investments at a government level." And I want to take this opportunity on behalf of our country team here in Nigeria to deeply thank the government of Nigeria for not just believing in biofortification, but throwing their full weight of support behind this program. I know Paul and the team could not have done what they have achieved without the deep support and partnership of IITA and the Nigerian government. And Akina Deshna knows that Nigeria is leading this work for West Africa, for Africa, and for the world. So where do we go from here? Well, we're not alone. We are tackling one of many problems that have been identified by the UN that must be solved by 2030. We're all here in some way contributing to one or more of these sustainable development goals. For HarvestPlus, we zoom in to the zero hunger goal. We sit at 2.2.1. That's our little place in the Sustainable Development Goals agenda. We are part of the micronutrient malnutrition community that is helping to reach a point in 2030 when no one goes hungry and no one is suffering from micronutrient malnutrition. We have to remember that while resources are limited, we are all working in the same space. We're all working towards these same big 17 goals. And we sometimes have to pause to remember that we are part of a bigger global effort. And it's vitally important that we know how to contribute meaningfully to this bigger agenda. What's our responsibility? How are we accountable? And I remind myself of this accountability every day, because sometimes you get so focused on just pursuing your goals. Well, for me, my personal journey with that number 1 billion started in Des Moines, in the state of Iowa, which many of you will know is the home of the World Food Prize. And I was deeply honored to attend in my first month on the job the World Food Prize ceremony, where the 4 laureates, including Dr. Howdy Buis, were honored as the 2016 laureates. And while I was there, and remember this was a very new green CEO, I was really still learning the ropes of biofortification. I was invited to join a CGR meeting. Many of the DGs were there with this gentleman sitting with the green tie. Now, I don't know if you recognize him, but this is Mr. Jim Kim Yong, who's the president of the World Bank. And he, alongside Akina Deshna, both gave keynotes that day. Both of things. In fact, they said such similar things, we thought they had the same script writer. And we asked them, did you align? They said we had no idea what each other was going to say. But both of them talked about Africa's grey matter. The fact that we have an opportunity, an obligation to really find a way of investing not just in Africa's agricultural system, but in Africa's grey matter. We now know that micronutrient malnutrition is fixable, and if we fix it, it allows children to develop their full brain potential. And that means there is direct correlation with improving productivity, improving nation enhancements, in stability, in political leadership. And therefore, both of these World Bank and African Development Bank leaders both said the same thing. It's time to invest in micronutrient malnutrition deficiency so that we can make that connection to poverty reduction, stability, a move away from conflict. They both made this link. So I was honored straight after that presentation to join a meeting with the World Bank president. Sitting next to him is Jürgen Vogeli, who is the chair of the CGR System Council. He chairs the Council of Donors that provide the grants to the CGR, and he is also the head of agriculture for the World Bank. And I was lucky enough to know Jürgen in a previous job, and in front of Jim Kim, he pointed to me and he said, Bev, as the new CEO of HarvestPlus, can you share HarvestPlus's vision with the World Bank president? Now, bear in mind, I was only less than a month into the job. I only had one headline in my mind, and I just said to him, President Kim, our vision is that by 2030, we will touch 1 billion lives with biofortification. And he said, you used the word will. You will reach 1 billion lives. And I said, well, that's because we will. I have no doubt in my mind. We have the technology, we have the research, we have the partners, we have the people. And he said, okay, well, I like big numbers. You've got my attention. You have my support. Come back when you have a plan and we'll work it out. so we have a plan. And in the next few weeks, we will be taking that plan back to the president. And we have every confidence that both the World Bank and the African Development Bank will help us to help you to get to that billion. So how are we going to do it? What is the plan? Well, working with the amazing HarvestPlus team over the last 12 months, we've taken a deep dive into our vision, our mission, our objectives, and we've built a strategic roadmap. Our vision remains unchanged. It's a very simple but very compelling vision. We all imagine a world without hidden hunger. And that's what we're shooting for. I don't think any of us will truly rest until we can truly say that there is nobody suffering unnecessarily from micronutrient malnutrition. Our mission is very simple. First of all, we work with partners. We cannot do this alone. We work with partners to tackle hidden hunger on a global scale by breeding vitamins and minerals into everyday staple food crops. Together, we are building sustainable food systems so we can bridge this gap between agriculture and nutrition. As Howdy Buis says, we're getting the plants to do the work. And our objective, well, we need to start off by reaching 20 million farming households by 2020 if we are to be confident of hitting that bigger target of reaching 1 billion consumers by 2030. And we can only do that through the development of inclusive and sustainable markets for biofortified crops. And I'm sure many of you have had the opportunity to hear about the work that the Nigeria HarvestPlus team are doing. They are pioneering not just the development of biofortified crops in Nigeria, but the development of commercializing biofortified crops, making sure that there is markets for these crops and that farmers and their families are earning an income from these crops, so that one day HarvestPlus can walk away. We have a sustainable solution that stays within the food system and continues to generate income. So how are we going to do this? Well, we have developed a very clear 5-year strategic plan that if we stay on track, we are confident we'll deliver our 2020 objective and get us closer to our 2030 goal of reaching 1 billion people. We brought the entire team together under one roof on another amazing research campus. I'm sure many of you have had the chance to interact with your colleagues in SIAT. But in May, Ruben Echeverria, the Director General of SIAT, invited and hosted all 170 HarvestPlus staff under one roof at the SIAT campus. And we came together to spend a week getting to know each other, team building, and really owning and sharing this strategic plan so that everyone had their chance to provide input, to shape it, to develop it, so that we are confident in 2018 that we can hit the ground running as a fully and strongly aligned family. Where are the crops and micronutrients that we're prioritizing? Well, as you know, the 3 micronutrients, vitamin A, zinc, and iron, can be expressed in a number of staple crops. For the vitamin A crops, we're prioritizing maize, orange sweet potato, cassava, banana, plantain. For zinc, we're prioritizing wheat and rice. For iron, we're prioritizing beans, pearl millet, and cowpea. And several crops can express both high levels of both zinc and iron. And for those crops, we're working on sorghum, potato, and lentils. Now, those with the red dot, we've also prioritized for what we call mainstreaming. We're urging the larger CG centers that produce wheat, rice, and orange maize to build biofortification into their core breeding platforms, their pipelines, so that by the end of 2030, all varieties of these 3 crops have a biofortified default trait. We want nutrition to be as important to crop breeders and developers as climate change, as pest resistance. This should be a building block for any new variety. We cannot put nutrition into second place any longer. It's too important to the development of the populations and the GDP of countries in Africa and Asia. So I want to congratulate and pay tribute to IITA because you've pretty much done it for cassava. We've hit that magic equilibrium point where the majority, or as much as you can within the constraints of the vegetative process, the cassava crop is now yellow. You have a nutritious crop that we can work with. Equally, your efforts in maize are outstripping any other CG centre. I hate to introduce a bit of competitive tension here, but congratulations to IITA because you're truly delivering this. But the job is not done. We need this to work across the whole of the CGR. We need you to share your expertise and learnings with the other centres. We need to get donors excited about the potential of mainstreaming all crop development. And we are working with the centres to try and make that as straightforward as possible. We will serve as the fundraiser. We will go out and try to bring investment into the centres. Our job in research and development is not done. We've spent 300 million. We've estimated we need at least another 200 million to get this job done, just in research. And guess where we're going to spend those research dollars? Right here. So we want to be with you on your journey, and we invite you to come on our journey with us. So I'm showing this slide more as a snapshot of the scale of what's ahead for the next 5 years. We have to go from operations and activities in 11 countries to 30 countries in the next 5 years. The team is still working on these numbers, so this is really just an early snapshot to give you a sense of the priorities. We know that over 11 years of learning by doing, we've managed to realize there are 3 basic stages to launch and deliver a crop in any country. It starts with the introduction stage. We need to first find a government entity that will support the introduction of biofortification. We need to lay the groundwork of the policy and regulatory implements that are needed. We need to work with the NARS, with the National Agricultural Research Systems, to get them excited about the potential for bringing this new germplasm into their system. That intro stage also involves working with local partners to find out where the local populations that are most in need of micronutrient malnutrition support, and then starting to build a network of extension service providers, working with the NARS to design demo plots, training days, getting farmers excited about the fact that these varieties are not just nutritious, but they're also as high yielding. They're also as drought resistant and pest resistant as the varieties they're familiar with. Once we've got past that initial intro stage, we move into what we call the scaling stage. And this is like any seed company. We incentivize, we want seed companies to be selling, we want farmers to be multiplying, we want growers to be buying seed and passing it on to their neighbors. And this is where the Nigeria team has had tremendous success by deploying so many different scaling solutions. The types of innovation that have landed right here are truly remarkable. Some of the stem production innovation and the fact that now the percentage of commercial stem production that is now generating real income for farmers is, I think we haven't seen this replicated anywhere else in Africa yet. So congratulations, Paul. So the scaling stage can take anything from sort of 4 to 5 to even 8 years, depending on the crop and the seed system available. But what we are aiming for is an anchoring stage. We need to walk away. We need to get these crops anchored into the food system. And that means we've prioritized the crops that we think we have the best chance of pushing through the research pipeline into release and into that anchoring stage. We probably and almost certainly cannot get to an anchoring stage for all crops in all countries in the next 5 years, but we can hit some of them. And this is our ambition. We wanted to show it to you all in one page. And let's just zoom into how that's going to work. We have to really push this journey from discovery to delivery. HarvestPlus, with our partners, is already working across the entire supply chain. We already work with upstream researchers, crop development teams, post-release seed multiplication support. We work with seed companies, seed systems to transfer seeds to farmers. We work on post-harvest handling and crop production and post-harvest losses. We work in food processing and value chain creation. I'm really looking forward to the tour of the marketplace after this talk. And we work with retailers and local retailers and consumers to understand market preferences for the final product. So we're already doing this, but we need to go deeper, faster, and harder in more countries with more partners. Continue developing better germplasm that is keeping pace with the other the important traits, and not just is increasing in nutritional value, but is increasing in managing pests, in managing drought tolerance. This is a joint activity. Nutrition isn't sitting out here on its own. It's part of a bigger crop development, research and development effort. We also need to continue investing in policy and influence. We need your help to work with the governments to ensure that biofortification is fully embedded into national and international policy, in research initiatives and implementation programs on the ground. And finally, we need to follow the lead started by Nigeria, and we need to push into the value chain. We need to ensure that there is supply and demand, that seed multipliers are making more seed, that seed systems are delivering, that farmers are growing, producers are using, and most importantly, that consumers are consuming these more nutritious foods. And let's be under no illusion. If we don't do this, We will not reach our objective of reaching 1 billion. This isn't an optional extra. This is an essential part of HarvestPlus's journey with the CGR. So I'm not going to go through this slide, but this is our plan on a page. We realized that the piece, rather than having 3 pillars, we have 4, because what we realized is that the pool piece of this chain is very complex. We need specialists that are focusing on the farm gate work with seed multiplication and delivery, but we equally need more specialists working at the market delivery, generating business partnerships, generating consumer opportunities. So although these 2 pool pillars tend to sit in the same place within the organization, we see in the future more differentiation between these 2 areas of work. Pillar 1 and Pillar 2 are what we call the push pillars, creating the landscape and the energy, the germplasm that we need to supply that pipeline. And we've developed a number of scale-up strategies based on the learnings that we've had in Nigeria. So this is what that ambitious expansion plan looks like just in Africa. As I said, we need to go from 6 countries to 18 countries if we're to reach our goals. That we've provisionally identified. We believe that we have the expertise in Nigeria, Uganda, and Zambia to act as hubs from which we can deploy experts and knowledge partners into the neighboring countries. And that's why the team here in Nigeria will play an ever-increasing role. IITA across all of our Africa regions will be critical to our growth strategy, and we're looking forward to moving forward hand in hand so that we match IITA's strategy as well. We're not competing with IITA, we're partnering with you so that we have a win-win for African farmers and families at the end of the day. So I want to the work that Paul and the team are doing here. This is just one of many activities that are unique in HarvestPlus. The emphasis on business. We're not just making families healthier, we're making them better livelihoods as well. And to do that, Paul is encouraging the team not just to teach nutrition, but to teach business, to work with your youth program, to work with your women's-led programs, because all of these things are important to HarvestPlus, and we're seeing tremendous results. All of this costs money though, and you're probably thinking, well, you've made some big numbers, 200 million research, 200 million to take it to market, that's a 400 million price tag that we have to raise in the next 5 years. How are we going to do that? Well, one of the first things I did when I arrived at HarvestPlus is I said, we need to think bigger when it comes to money. We've got to stop chasing after $1 million grant packages. We need to shoot a lot bigger than this. So last October, we entered the MacArthur Foundation 100 and Change competition. This was a one-off chance to win $100 million. We had no idea how far we'd get. There were over 7,000 applications for this grant. We found out in February that we made it not just through the first screening process into the 2,000 applicants, but we made it through the next stage into the last 800 applicants. And then at the end of March, we found out we've made it to the final 8. So we're all deeply excited because next week is a very important week, because on Tuesday, we will find out if we've made it to the finalists. The MacArthur Foundation board will be choosing up to 5 finalists. We think it may be more like 3. We are super confident. We are very confident in the proposal. The team has worked very hard. The MacArthur Foundation sent delegates to Nigeria to spend time with the team. They came back very, very complimentary of the team here. We're not putting all of our eggs in the MacArthur basket because that's just 100 million. We need 400 million. So we're also working with a number of other entities that are helping us build public-private relationships, working with companies to support this investment. And I hope we can continue to build that with IITA and help you with your fundraising efforts as well. So this was the team that went to Chicago to pitch for that $100 million. As you can see, Nigeria was very well represented in that event. And my final plea to you to support Paul and the team. I'm sure if you've already signed up, I understand there's over 7,000 people have already signed up for this year's Nutritious Food Fair. It's the third. We're very, very excited to see this initiative grow. It's a beacon in the HarvestPlus calendar, and congratulations to Paul and the team. And thank you to all of you. I think I've gone over my time a little, sorry about that, but I'm happy to take questions if there's still time. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Beth, for this excellent presentation. On the MacArthur Prize, one thing we are very good at in Nigeria, West Africa, is prayer. So we are all behind you. It's going to work. So colleagues, any questions, suggestions, comments? Please. Yes, please.
Thank you so much for your good presentation. It is well known that HarvestPlus has done a lot in terms of zinc fortified food, especially rice and wheat. From your presentation and from what we know that you have done a lot in Asia, what happens to Africa?
And Wolf, would you like to give a little bit of depth on where we're going with the ideas for zinc rice for Africa?
So first, welcome everyone, and it's great to see so many partners also here and participating in this event. When HarvestPlus started out, and our major donor was the Gates Foundation, and they selected initial target countries for each of the crops. And because of the importance of rice in Asia, so Bangladesh was selected as initial target country, which was based on the burden for micronutrients for zinc and also of the importance and the per capita intake of rice. And so initially we started in Asia, but now we make efforts again for high zinc rice development for West Africa. What has been done so far was screening some of the local germplasm in partnership with the Africa Rice Center. And the plans are now to go for a fast-track approach for West Africa for high zinc rice. What does this fast-track approach embrace? So the plans are to first screen the local germplasm. The Nerita rices are higher in protein than the rice in Asia. This is very important because the zinc and the iron, they are co-localized with protein. And so when we screen the local varieties, we have a very high chance that in some countries, some rice will come up, which would be already at a zinc target level. And the next step would be to fast-track this rice, multiply it, and get it to the farmer as soon as possible, while at the same time, by looking at this and determining the zinc in these local rice varieties, we do identify the parents for the breeding. So we have it's a two-way strategy what we approach. And so I hope that in the next 2 years, we would have already probably one high zinc rice out with the farmers for testing in demonstration plots, and then in 3 years, have a rice variety developed.
Any more questions, comments? Yes, please. Yeah.
Hello, my name is Daniel from the Nation newspaper. Now, you just outlined a 5-year development plan where you're going to reach 2 billion people. How much are you going to spend within this period? And from this amount, what do you expect? What do you expect from the World Bank and the African Development Bank? And secondly, the government has been struggling to make the school feeding program successful. From your experience across Asia, what do you think, what kind of plan do you think government can put in place to make the school feeding program work very well?
Thank you very much for that excellent question. Well, first of all, as you've clearly set out, we cannot reach 1 billion people with just HarvestPlus. This requires very deep levels of commitment from governments, from our donors, from our partners in the CJR, and also to expand existing programs that are already invested in meeting different targets for health and agriculture. So the first thing we seek from governments is to make biofortification built into other programs. We don't want HarvestPlus to be, or biofortification to be, this little satellite bubble. We want biofortification to be part of school feeding programs. We want it to be part of any delivery of aid support to farmers, whether it's through extension services for agriculture, through the generation of new varieties and seeds that are coming from other sources. We want people to think of biofortification as an essential building block in any other government policy. And that's why we want both agriculture ministers and health ministers to work together to say we can solve this health challenge through agriculture. So we want them to sit at the same table together, we want them to spend their budgets together, and we want biofortification to be part of bigger agendas. And we're already seeing that happen. We've managed to get biofortification built into the National Agricultural Plan for 7 countries already. And we need both health ministries, agriculture ministries, education ministries to all be talking about biofortification. So this won't be just a research exercise, this will be an advocacy and policy exercise, and we will be investing in more team members that can help Paul reach those audiences. And you know, we set ourselves some very big targets, but we believe we can do that with people's help. You asked also about how much it's going to cost. Well, the 400 million is just the first 5 years, but what we hope is that that will be an exponential curve that dips off eventually. We think if we can act as a catalyst to get as much biofortification embedded into crops, into policies, into programs, then for the commercial crops, the market will take over. For wheat, maize and rice, the market, we won't need to push the crop anymore because the market will take this over. For the less commercial crops, we believe government policies and other strategies, the farm-to-farm informal markets, will then take over the job for us. So we envisage a big investment curve in the first 5 years and then hopefully a declining investment for the next 5 or 10 years.
Yeah, I have 3 hands up here, so I'll go 1, 2, 3. So, Melak, please. Yeah.
Okay, my name is Malaku Gadul. I'm happy to see that HarvestPlus is growing in activities and impact, and also it's good to see the vision to do more. You have mentioned in your presentation that we need to develop more varieties to mainstream actually this biofortification. So technically, without going to the detail, Wolf knows, cultivar development takes a long time. And now there are tools, molecular tools, and in the first phase so far, HarvestPlus did not give much priority, understandably, just taking the materials, varieties developed for delivery. But now, if you want to do more, is there a plan to use these molecular tools to invest just a fraction of the 100 million or whatever fund you get in using these cutting-edge technologies?
I will let Wolf take that. I mean, the answer is just resounding yes. particularly for zinc molecular markers. Our head of nutrition and Wolf very much know the importance of investments in the tools and the marker development that we need for this research. We've got some very able partners around the world that are working on these tools. Wolf, I'll let you add a little bit more detail if you like.
I mean, unfortunately for this MacArthur grant, most of the project is about scaling. So there is not that much money for R&D, but through this we free money from other projects and some from our core investment, which then we invest in R&D. In terms of use of the novel technologies, genomic selections, I mean, you name it, gene editing. We have a group and we had a workshop this year, and we discussed how to most efficiently use those new technologies. And again, it comes down, it's basically a question of money. Of these 150 varieties, so far all were developed using conventional breeding, and we did use markers only for provitamin A in maize. But when we go for mainstreaming for the invisible traits, iron and zinc, I mean, certainly these new technologies, and especially when we have molecular markers, will greatly speed up the process and shorten the time to market. So we have to be on top of those technologies and also how they are used, and also we do even modeling how they are used most effectively.
Yeah, thank you. So yes, the colleague, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Madam, for the wonderful presentation. I'm a new person here today, but I'm excited with what I have just been hearing. My name is Dr. Ejike Oji. I'm the CSO focal point person for the global initiative of FP 2020, and then also chair the Association of the Advancement of Family Planning in Nigeria. Paul has converted me to find a nexus really between health and agriculture in terms of programming. Now, I'm looking at the money you're looking for. I do know that Gates Foundation is already supporting you in your work, but I feel also donors do fund the same organization with a new strategic way or pathway to also improve lives. Because I know the overarching goal of Gates Foundation is to improve people's lives globally. We just ended a 2-year project with Gates Foundation where we looked at 4 issue areas with 8 CSOs partnering to speak with one voice in terms of advocating for money for the healthcare system. And those areas actually has a very cost-cutting approach with yours. One is family planning, which our organization took a lead. The other one is nutrition, and CSON of Nigeria took a lead. And another organization took a lead on immunization, and then another one on childhood diarrheal diseases. If you look at all the fortification you're doing, you're actually targeting those areas that this project looked at. So my question to you is, wouldn't you think that your organization need to look at how to see this nexus as a way to approach Gates Foundation for a bigger grant? Because they've already shown with the grant they gave us in Nigeria that we spoke with one voice to the National Assembly to increase the health budget. So if they can get that done through your own ways, which is a much more sustainable manner, I think that also will be fine.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for those insights, and thank you so much for your support as well. I'm aware of the work that you've been doing, and my biggest passion is that we are supporting you. We don't want it the other way around. Biofortification should be like a foundation underpinner to other people's programs. And I am a passionate believer that we've got to, you use the word nexus, it's the perfect word. We've got to play in that space of bridging this nexus between agriculture and health. And nutrition is a beautiful bridge because we can deliver nutrition through agriculture. And the extension services that are being delivered to communities with health outcomes can be used as the same extension service vehicles. It's a distribution route for knowledge, for agricultural information. And I know Paul and the team are already using those multiple distribution opportunities for education. Your specific question about the Gates Foundation, we will definitely take that suggestion into the in-house team. We may even call you and have a deeper dive to get some ideas from you. We're very aware that the Gates Foundation is a very complex donor. We've traditionally been supported from the agricultural development part of the Gates Foundation. They deeply understand crop development, research. They understand the need for investing in new technologies for agriculture. More and more, we're having conversations with the nutrition department in the Gates Foundation, which is more anchored into the health space. And what we see going forward is we need to bring those two discussions together and seek investment for Nigeria and for Africa that ask our donors to work together. We don't want to have agriculture money here, nutrition money here. We'd like to have one holistic support system, because the two are very connected. And if we can give them working examples where agencies with government support are already crossing that nexus, then that will help us take that case to the Gates Foundation. And so thank you very much for those suggestions.
Yes, very good morning. My name is Fidelis Duka. I'm a filmmaker and a broadcaster. I work in Nollywood. I'll start by commending HarvestPlus. In the last 4 years, we've extensively worked with, as an industry, that's the film industry in Nigeria, has worked with HarvestPlus. At the initial stage, when HarvestPlus approached the industry to work in mainstreaming biofortification and malnutrition through our movies, we were a bit, on the slight side, wondering what the whole idea was. But subsequently, in the last 4 years, I think to a large extent, we've seen the need, because our own meaningful way of contributing to that sector. Interestingly, most of the movies have been seen in over 45 African countries through African Magic, that platform. And I think we must, at this point, commend Paul for that initiative and commend the team in Washington. Beyond that, what I've also observed is that there's also a need to also use other channels for this advocacy. It also goes beyond just the movies. It's also important that we begin to create more documentaries and all that that will also begin to pass this message, essentially. And that's why, if you see in the all year, we have a couple of our Nollywood stars here who have come to identify with your project. We believe in it, and if you see, most of the films now have some elements of biofortification being mentioned in the films. So for us, it's, we want to commend your efforts so far, and say we'll work with HarvestPlus and other partners in growing this information platform. Thank you.
Well, I will pass my thanks directly to Paul, because this really is his ideas, his creative energy that have allowed us to... I mean, who would have thought we'd have a Nollywood movie star among our ranks? We know the power of communication in HarvestPlus. I am deeply committed to expanding that. We had a fantastic session with the team yesterday where we heard the results that they're already generating, not just in movies, but across radio. Very powerful medium, I understand, here in Nigeria. Starting to do more in audio, visual, in TV. It's expensive, so we need partners to help us with the television work. But using mass media generally is a tried and tested tool. We talked a little bit about celebrities. We maybe need to have a Nigerian A-lister who can join HarvestPlus and be our Nollywood champion. But all of these ideas are so important, and I know Paul and the team would value any suggestions that, you know, who do we need to reach out to? Are there other partners that can help build those creative ideas? And Paul knows that he has our full support from Washington to spread the word and to find that investment. These are really making a difference. Thank you for that acknowledgement.
Ismail? Yeah.
My question, I think, relates to the issue of advocacy and outreach. Recently, we have been bombarded by activists who claim that biofortified cassava are GMOs. So as you plan to scale out and reach the 1 billion people, you're going to face these activists. Some of them are genuinely concerned because they are not well informed and they just think that these are really GMOs. So what are the plans that HarvestPlus have to systematically educate, reach out, and give scientific information to the public about the crop that we are developing?
Thank you for that very important question. And I'm surprised it actually is the 5th or 6th question. It's usually number 1. So when I talk to a new audience for the first time, it's usually the first question. And it's a very important question. We are very deeply aware of the fear and the sensitivity that exists around new technologies, and GM being just one of them. We also are a community of scientists. We also have our own conflicted opinions on this subject. Many of us would like to use and have access to tools that allow us to go further and faster. The reality is very simple for HarvestPlus, though. We do what we do in partnership with governments. We can only do what we do in partnership with governments. We produce germplasm and then work with the NARS. That's our first step in any process. So while the NARS and the governments are not ready for GM material, we don't need to work with GM material. We can do everything we need to do with conventionally bred crops. And all 150 varieties that have so far been released are all conventionally bred. How do we overcome the natural suspicion and fear that it often is rise? And you're right, with $100 million would come great fame. And with fame comes both the positives and the negatives. We're ready for this at HarvestPlus. We've been answering this question for 10 years. It's the first question out of the box. We are transparent. We have rigor in all of our evidence and our science. We are always open to have visitors. Paul would happily show any journalist or any activist around the crop sites, the developing labs. We've got nothing to hide. We are doing what we're doing in partnership with government with conventional crops. And you are our ambassadors. All of you in the room who support biofortification and agricultural technology, you can help us with that question. Whenever it comes up with your families, with your friends, that's the message. Biofortification and HarvestPlus, all of the crops released are conventionally bred. We're using traditional plant breeding methods. There is no GM HarvestPlus crop anywhere in the world in release. So it's a very simple answer, and we just have to keep saying it over and over and over again and accept that that sensitivity exists, but we can respond to it.
Thanks, Ma, for the comments so far. And the sense I have is that biofortification is actually the future of nutrition. And I share the views of Akin Adesina and the World Bank President that Africa is a victim of hidden hunger, and the Grey Matter project has to be done. And I'm excited here because HarvestPlus is providing a cheaper solution. What I want to suggest is that HarvestPlus does explore partnerships aggressively, looking at a number of 1 billion. I'm happy HarvestPlus is already talking with Ashoka. That will bring a lot of social solutions. I want to strongly suggest that HarvestPlus also does talk with Rotary International. Rotary is presently at the verge of eradicating the second disease, if it happens in the next few months, from the surface of the earth, which is polio. And for those of us in Rotary, the question is, after polio, what next? And my answer is, after polio is biofortification. I hope you can help push that answer across to them in Chicago. I think that will help with solutions and other membership organizations around the world. Thank you.
Thank you for those suggestions, and I agree with everything you've said. I'm familiar with many of those organizations, and they're doing great work. We already work with 440 partners. We had to actually count them for the MacArthur submission. They wanted evidence of our partnerships. And when we happened to mention we have lots of partners, they said, oh, can you list them for us all? So I had a team of 3 people for nothing but 3 weeks collecting evidence of all 440 partners that we already work with. I believe we need to be quite strategic about this in the future. We need to pick our partners with scale in mind, and we need to use their audiences so that we can reach more people faster. Thank you for those suggestions. They obviously have relevance beyond Nigeria. So we're having an Africa leaders meeting in the next 2 days in Abuja, so we'll take some of those suggestions into that meeting straight away. Thank you very much.
Yes, please. Yes.
Yes, thanks a lot for a very nice presentation. I'm a bit curious about how far you have come with the public-private partnerships, if you can say something about that, or if it's still, in the pipeline. So I accept if you don't want to talk about it.
Thank you. It is still very much in the pipeline. Public-private partnership, as you know, takes many forms, and in many ways we already have some public-private partnership here in Africa. We've already worked with seed companies. In Zambia, we have a very good relationship with Seedco, and I know Paul can give you many examples where we're already partnering directly with seed companies using public sector funding. So technically that is a public-private partnership. What we'd like to do is scale that up on a regional level and a global level. The types of partners that we believe can really help us get to $1 billion are the big regional and global corporations. And that takes us to have a regional and global mindset. Like any entrepreneurial startup program, our success to date has been built bottom up. It has been built by the country managers and their programs on the ground. The next step of HarvestPlus's journey is to learn from those bottom-up solutions and scale them into regional and global solutions. So we've had some very good conversations with Agnes Kalabata in Agra. And I hope within the next 12 months we'll be able to work through Agra to develop some very significant public-private partnerships through the number of vehicles that they offer. And we also are talking to a number of very large multinational food companies, one of which is already partnering with Paul here in Nigeria and buying up pretty much every contract of maize that we have available. So we'd like to inject the public piece of those private relationships. And I think the best way to do that is probably through our CGR partners. And so over the next 12 months, I'll be talking to the DGs and DDGs to talk about how can we leverage the government relationships that you have at a regional level in order to match them with some of these big investment opportunities with multinational food companies and regional seed companies. So that's just some of the thinking that we'll take forward.
Thank you very much for a wonderful presentation, and in particular, the impact HarvestPlus is already making globally. Apart from the impact studies conducted and also the scaling now that has been going on, being targeted to certain countries, there are many more spillover countries from the HarvestPlus work since it started in the early 2000s. I just came from Sierra Leone as an example, and Ellen Keller is promoting the orange flesh sweet potato nationally. And there are examples of that in many countries. Similarly, there is a seed company now promoting orange maize varieties in Sierra Leone. How can you, as HarvestPlus as an entity, capture some of this impact so that the policymakers know that the value of money is more than what is being reported?
That's a super, super question. Thank you very much. And it's a great honor that you're here, Chief Alfred. Thank you very much. You've asked one of the billion-dollar questions, really, for HarvestPlus, because monitoring and evaluation is expensive. I mean, we believe, because I would say this, but I genuinely believe we have one of the best monitoring and evaluation teams in the CGR. The team based in Washington, D.C. is supported by over 30 different M&E experts embedded around the world. And we take great pride in the rigor of the numbers that we share with our donors. Our donors require us to measure households reached. And that in itself is an imperfect metric, because it only tells you whether the farmer has received a packet of seeds. We want to measure households reached and households consuming, and we are doing, but it's expensive. Some donors understand the importance of investing in M&E, and therefore we've been able to build that beyond monitoring just the HarvestPlus countries to capturing some of the extra diffusion that we're seeing. Will we be able to ever measure everything? No, and I don't think we want to desire to control it. But to be successful, biofortification has to have a life much bigger than HarvestPlus. But can we capture more than we're currently capturing in order to generate more excitement from donors? Yes, and we have a number of conversations underway with SIP, with the World Food Programme, with World Vision, all of whom we know are distributing biofortified ingredients and crops. And it may just be a simple case of adding a question onto their questionnaires so that we can get some validation to build the additional knowledge base. These conversations are happening, and I'm very committed to making sure we capture as much as possible. But I do know that there comes a tipping point where I think that biofortification is at a similar point to the organics movement back in the 90s. It was one organization's vision for many years. It was a very focused and narrow vision. And there was suddenly this moment when organics became famous and everyone was doing it. Everyone was claiming everything was organic. There were no standards because it happened so quickly. It was like a race to the bottom. The market took over. Now, to truly go to scale, I would love biofortification to follow the organics movement, but with one difference. We need to put some standards into the system before that happens. We don't want the market to race to the bottom on standards for nutrition. And we believe at the moment HarvestPlus has a window of opportunity to establish the standards that will be set once this becomes famous and marketable and commercial. HarvestPlus doesn't necessarily have to be the enforcer or the quality assurance certifier, but we do believe we have a role because of our research integrity of being the standard setter. And that has to happen bottom up and top down. We have to have, and we already have, at a country level, ways of validating with governments whether the planting material is biofortified or not. But we need to formalize that system, because we're likely to see competitors enter the market that will also want to claim that their material is biofortified, and we need to be able to tell the farmer or the consumer which one to believe. So all of these are challenges ahead. They're all challenges of scale. We will do our best to keep pace with the monitoring and evaluation, and we will do our best to stay one step ahead of the standard setting. But again, we're going to need the help of CGR partners to do that, because it's all rooted in evidence. It's all rooted.
If you look at most of these farmers are actually women. Never mind that picture over there. Most of the pictures you see, especially on farms, are women and their children. And of course we know that these are the vulnerable groups. How are you going to involve and co-opt this set of people into this laudable program. Thank you.
I think we're coming up to time, but I will answer this by saying, first of all, it's a very big personal passion of mine, madam, so you can have my full assurance that this will remain a key focus for HarvestPlus. But it's not just a key passion of mine, it's a key passion of Paul Ilona's, it's a key passion of this team, it's a key passion of our donors and our partners in Africa. We know the role that women and children play in societies, and that for that reason, we don't just measure farming households. We measure whether those farming households are led by women or men. We set ourselves targets to reach a certain number of women in every community, and they're based on targets that we set with government support. So all I can reassure you is I don't like the word gender, but gender is a vital part of what we do. Women is a vital part of what we do, and we both record it, we report it, and we target our programs where possible to female farmers. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Bev, for all the knowledge you've shared with us and the passion with which you have shared it. I'm just itching with all the communication tools that you have, that at some point the knowledge of you talked about the gray matter, this hidden hunger will be so widespread that in every little corner of Africa, women, men, young men and women will know the difference between sort of just eating and eating to have all the nutrients that you need. And especially the fact that if you do not have the right level of the nutrients, the impact is for life. And I think no mother knowingly will actually commit her children to a life where their potential is limited. So once we impart that knowledge, that will help us with the pull factor. Ladies and gentlemen, join me in thanking Bev once more for this excellence. Now, a group photograph in front of the conference center, and then there will be the exhibition. So a group photograph just outside.